Hi everyone, I'm Fox 35 Storm Team Meteorologist Ian Cassette in Orlando, Florida. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend so far. We are here with an update in the tropics. If you've missed it, we've got a tropical system that has been brewing in the western Caribbean, and it is now our next named storm. Tropical Storm Idalia. It has been upgraded to a tropical storm after NOAA hurricane hunters have found at least 40-mile-per-hour winds within the storm. You're looking at the current satellite imagery. It has not moved much here this morning, but it has had vigorous amount of storms around it, and you can see the circulation there. It's dry on the north end as it's pooling in some drier air, but in the south end where all the moisture is at, that's where those storms are currently located. So we are seeing this storm that has maintained its strength, even developing here so far this morning. It is currently over some very warm and deep tropical waters that has allowed it to intensify, and it's sort of been just circulating about. It hasn't moved a whole lot. It drifted south overnight, and now it's starting to drift even to the east, but it doesn't have a north push yet, so it is not heading our way just yet. That could change, though, and is expected to as we get into Monday, as it finally has an avenue to move northward. It's kind of blocked right now, so that's why it's drifting about, and not a strong steering current until Hurricane Franklin does move out to allow it to move to the north. So there's Cancun. If you've been there, it is to its southeast. There's the Yucatan Peninsula. If the storm is to continue to the north, it's going to be going over some warm waters. If it goes over land, it may have a more difficult time. But the latest track from the National Hurricane Center does not have it going over the Yucatan. It has it staying over the water. This may be because models had a little bit of a difficult grasp on the system because it wasn't moving much. It didn't move enough to the west to stay over land or to see more treacherous conditions for a tropical system. Instead, it is expected to continue to the north. So just to put a timeline on things, this is the latest 11:15 a.m. advisory, which is when it was noted to be a tropical storm. It is expected to continue to the north. What has changed since the last cone that you may have saw, it's a little bit farther to the south. There is still a very large spread. It goes all the way down to Tampa Bay and all the way west to Destin, Florida, in the Panhandle. It is expected to be a Category 1 storm, but the language by the National Hurricane Center and what I have seen from models indicates that there is potential that this could be a stronger storm. This is a low-end forecast so far, and they are hesitant to give it an upgrade to the path. 8 p.m. on Tuesday, it will become a hurricane, a Category 1 storm. That is when it is forecast with 85-mile-per-hour winds, maintaining that hurricane strength, and then bending east as it goes through the Big Bend of Florida. This would include most of Central Florida, the cone of uncertainty. But you also have to remember the effects of the storm are outside, can be outside of that cone. So there's definitely going to be effects in Orlando all the way down to southeastern parts of Florida. It's just that this is the cone of uncertainty that marks where this storm can go within 2/3 of an error of the forecast for the past 5 years. It's gotten narrower, so the forecasts have gotten better. But this is a tricky system because of how slow moving it is until eventually speeds up once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. So let's go through a few things here. The hurricane hunters, they have been gathering data today. That is so important. That is incredibly important. We have not had anything other than satellite data so far. Now we actually have tangible data that the hurricane hunters have gathered. They have researched. They send down a dropsun, same way that we put up weather balloons, the National Weather Service that helps us with the forecast and helps forecast models be a little more accurate with more data. They do it kind of the opposite way, where they fly into a hurricane and they drop what's called a dropsun, and it takes data, and that feeds into the computer systems, which gives us hopefully more accurate forecasts. So that's going to be important, but that data will not go into the models until this afternoon, so we'll see what they say. We could have even a better picture. Maybe we could see a more intense storm. We will have to stick out for that update. We'll have that 5 p.m. update this afternoon. That would, I think, would be an important one after those afternoon models have come through. So they've been gathering data today. That's how they found that it had tropical storm force winds. For us in Central Florida, for much of Florida, the path of the storm obviously has a big impact on what you could see. If it's closer to the eastern or west coast of Florida, say Tampa Bay to the north near the Nature Coast, that would mean bigger impacts for Central Florida. Stronger winds, heavier rain, larger rain totals as well, and potential for being on the dirty side of the storm. If you're on the east side of the storm, that's where you could see more vigorous storms and potential for tornadoes. Then we also have the potential for rapid intensification. Rapid intensification will be possible with this storm because of how warm the Gulf waters are with this storm. Now, let's go through what exactly is driving the storm. What are the factors that are going to affect it in its development? Right now, you really can see the picture. It's been beautiful. It's been really nice in Florida. We've had a lot of sunshine, and that is all the yellow you see here. Not the sunshine, but the drier air. This is capturing the water vapor or the amount of moisture in the air. And you can see off to the east, there is now Category 2 Franklin. Franklin's not going to impact us. It's going to stay out there, but it's going to have a little bit of an influence on where the system heads. So you can kind of look at the winds. Look at the winds going counterclockwise, and then the outflow out of that hurricane, a strong hurricane, it is sending it west. And look at as those winds continue westerly, or they'll be our easterly winds, rather, going over Florida and then influencing the winds over the Gulf. This is bringing drier air in an environment ahead of Idalia. The drier air may be a limiting factor in this storm, but as this storm heads to the north, it's going to change the direction of winds, which will allow for this system, for the storm, to finally move northward. So that's a big influence on the eventual intensification of the system. If it has a difficult time with the dry air, because tropical systems don't like dry air, that may limit how powerful it gets to. But it's got a lot of moisture on its south end, and that's what it is pulling in. If it can overcome that, it may intensify quickly. And this is a factor that is working in its favor. We have had record-setting temperatures for sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico so far. That has been evident. If you've gone on a beach trip to Tampa, maybe you've been to Clearwater, you've felt the water, it's very warm. These are above average. These are record-setting temperatures. We have not had a tropical system yet to kind of rough up the waters, kind of upwell, kind of get waters from deeper up. No, it's been all sitting here, just heating up throughout the summer. So that's what this storm is. It's going to have, it's like a feast. It goes to a feast, and it has all the food in front of it. So with that, it's fuel for this storm, and that is going to be a likely factor. And what we have seen in recent years, when you've had very warm Gulf temperatures, these storms continue to intensify all the way up to landfall. So they they take advantage of that last second, using all the energy available to them with the warm, moist waters or air that they have above the Gulf of Mexico and oceans. So what the spaghetti models are showing is that there's kind of a couple of two areas here, or a couple of two thoughts. There's a far western path that is possible here so far. The yellow, this is kind of closer to what the GFS, the American model, has shown, a more west path. But there are a number of other hurricane models that have shown a closer path on the other side of the Apalachicola into the Great Bend. The European model, I would say, is even farther east than what these are showing. But these are just a collection. These are helpful in identifying the cone and trying to figure out what's the best direction. Though it looks like they're all online, they all know what's going to happen. Again, we're getting a lot of information here today, and this could change. So that's why days out, we need to be paying attention closely to this. And if you have written this off and you're like, oh, it's going to be to our west, it's not bringing any impacts, we still don't know. We have to watch this very closely because it could go farther east, it could be more intense, and it could bring some impacts that maybe you weren't expecting. So that's what our job is here, is to kind of paint the picture here for you on what we know and what we don't know. We do not know what impacts we are going to see to a specific area because we do not know where it's going to end up. This is what our Fox model says. The latest model run is in. Fox model has done a great job. It's an exclusive model that we have here. It did an excellent job last year with Ian. It was probably the most accurate, and I'm not just saying that just because of work for Fox 35, but because it actually was accurate. We like to see this. So Fox model for what it's showing with Idalia, it has it to the southeast of Cancun and then venturing to the north. So it finally gets to move north. It has an open avenue. It gets the green light, gets to move into the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to occur throughout the day on Monday. From there, things are going to they're going to speed up. It's really going to get going. And some people may be caught off guard because it's going to pick up speed much faster than what it was going at earlier. And because it finally is able to move along, those winds are now out of the south and kind of pulling and dragging it this way. So Tuesday, 1 a.m., it's in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Pressure is starting to decrease over the Florida. You'll start to feel some gustiness as we go on into early Tuesday. Then boom, right there, Wednesday, one more. We passed 24 hours and it's already expected to make landfall according to our Fox model. Remember, this can change, but this is one model run showing that we may have a hurricane, and a strong hurricane, making landfall southwest of Tallahassee. So this is, a lot of this area is beautiful nature preserve, St. Mark's. really a wonderful area, but there may be some big coastal flooding and some big impacts. If it's over the water longer, if it goes directly north, that's what we could see. Locally in central Florida, certainly could see some waves of storms starting by Tuesday night and then continuing through Wednesday. As the system moves north, it's going to drag along, when we're on the east end, it's going to drag along waves of rain our way. So the better chances of rain will be to the west, lower chances of rain will be to the east. With strong thunderstorms possible, we could see some heavy downpours. We could also see tornadoes because the way that these storms interact with land, that friction creates a little bit of spin. So that may lead to some isolated tornadoes that we'll have to watch for in central Florida. But this would lead to lesser impacts, say, in the Space Coast. If you are in Palm Bay, Melbourne, it would be much farther away from you. So you would see some gustiness, but probably not as high of impacts as if it was farther east. By 10 a.m. Wednesday morning, it's already into Georgia. And it's still a strong system. Even after it makes landfall, a fast system like this could have impacts well inland. And that looks to be the case. As it moves into Georgia, Atlanta could see some big impacts from this. Tropical storm warnings, I would imagine, up there. And then heading farther inland into South Carolina still as a strong tropical storm. So this is going to be a unique system because it's very fast, and just like Michael, if you remember, was a very fast storm, kind of went in a similar path. We don't know if that's going to be the strength of Michael, obviously a very powerful system, but it moved very quickly inland and then eventually led it through Virginia. And when I was up in Virginia, we got a lot of rain from Michael, and everyone was thinking about Florence as being the one that was a big rainmaker. It ended up being Michael because Michael moved so quickly and it came all the way up and still had a lot of rain. So let's jump around to our next model. I want to show you them all just so you can get an idea of what they're saying. European model, this is 6 in the morning out in the Gulf of Mexico. Rain is probably going to start moving in central Florida throughout the day on Tuesday. Probably the best chance of rain will be Tuesday afternoon. That's when conditions will start to deteriorate. So basically, if you're trying to make your plans, you have up until Tuesday morning to get things done before things start to kind of go downward. Where rain starts to pick up, we start to have those tropical downpours, breeziness is as well picking up. But then once we get to Tuesday night into Wednesday, here's what the European model has. This is the 6Z model run. We'll get the 12Z this afternoon, see what that has. But it has trended a little bit farther to the west than what it had yesterday. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it has a landfall much farther to the east than what we saw with the Fox model and the GFS model, which is even farther to the west. It has it more around kind of southeast of Tallahassee, right smack dab in the middle of the Big Bend. This would drive large waves into Dixie, Levy County, Citrus County, Pasco, along Tampa Bay. This would likely lead to some coastal flooding and also bigger impacts for central Florida because it's closer. We'll have pressure lines tighter over us. So that's when we could see 40, 50, 60 mile per hour winds with the biggest impacts from Gainesville and to the west. And that is where we are expecting, if this were to occur, what the European model, some large impacts here in central Florida, especially closer to the coast. We'll get some decent rain from this as it moves north. It moves into Georgia, just like the Fox model showed. Wednesday, 9 o'clock, conditions will start to let up. Still some rain, but the heaviest and worst of our rain will likely be done with by the time we get to Wednesday night. Now, finally, the GFS, this has been, I would say, a little more inconsistent on things. It kind of has bounced around. If you recall early in the infancy of forecasting this system, it was saying it would be a weak tropical system, maybe not even a tropical storm moving over South Florida. How things change, and this happens as you get closer and closer and closer. Models try to adjust, but from that far out, it's very difficult. It's like Plinko. You don't know, if you drop it from the top, you don't know where it's going to end up, but as you get closer, you have a better idea. GFS has it much farther to the west, also a little bit weaker on the weaker side, and then turning north. It thinks probably the drier air is going to make things a little bit more difficult for this to develop, but still a strong tropical storm at the very least, moving on the west to the west of Tallahassee. This is near Destin, bringing impacts there. Panama City, likely a direct hit from that system, but this would also mean less impacts for Central Florida, for Orlando, for Daytona. Probably not going to be seeing as big of impact if the GFS ends up being correct. But we have to look at models and we have to see, okay, who's been consistent? Who has been an A+ student? GFS so far, now if it ends up being correct, maybe it was right or wrong, but we already know it's been all very inconsistent, where the European model has been a little bit more consistent with what it has shown as a possibility. So you have to go with what you know so far. Now, looking at the European model, this map shows you the odds of seeing tropical storm force winds. The farther west you are into the northwest, that, according to the latest European model, shows that you will have about a 70% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds in the western half of Marion County. So Ocala to the west, here's 75. Here's I-10. the I-10 to 75 corridor is likely going to see some very strong winds out of this system if it takes a path as the European model suggests. Now, if it's that far west, that means that the odds of seeing tropical storm force winds are less the farther southeast you get. So not less likely to see those strong winds along the Cape up to Daytona. Stronger winds will be to your west and northwest. This could change, though, if it hugs a little bit closer to, say, close to Tampa Bay. This would all shift east. This can change. So this is just to give you a general idea of what to expect. The most likely scenario so far that we have, given what information we have. But again, this can change. So tropical storm force winds seem like a possibility for our entire area, with the highest chance or the more likely chance to the west, because the system's going to be coming out of the south and likely moving up north to northeast and bringing some big winds up to Lake City, also to the west into Cedar Key. That whole region will likely see the strongest winds if the European model is the one that ends up being accurate. Now, if you live along the coast, or you know people have coast, or maybe you have a place, maybe a beach home right along this stretch, the Nature Coast up to the Big Bend, there's a couple of things that I'm considering that are a little bit more of an underrated factor. Not really underrated, but maybe not appreciated as much so far with this system. We have a full moon, a supermoon, in fact, actually a rare supermoon, a blue moon. That means a second full moon the same month. That's going to be coinciding basically right around Wednesday, so this might elevate the surf even more, with high tides being a little bit higher than usual. So with a system driving all that water up, we could see 2 feet or a foot or more, 13 feet to 9 feet of water deep into the ocean, driven into the coast. And that could lead to some big coastal flooding to Cedar Key, to Levy County, Dixie County, right along the Nature Coast here. Mangroves help, certainly, but in areas that are more exposed, that's going to be rough. And that would go all the way up to Tallahassee as well. So that is going to be a concern, that's something that we are going to have to watch for closely with this. If you live along the coast, there could be some coastal surge, some flooding found along the coast there with the rain and with the winds being driven by the storm. With the rainfall, though, I don't think the rainfall is going to be as big of a factor with the system for many of us, but it will have still some isolated flooding probably farther to the west. But the European model shows that rainfall, certainly over central Florida, isn't too impressive, and it's because it's moving quickly and the rain will be a little bit more scattered if it is in the current path that it's expected. But still some meaningful rain, and especially meaningful rain at Tampa Bay and to the south. Sarasota, they absolutely need this rain, and this is helpful, especially if they can avoid the direct hit. But for areas that are going to be hit harder, Tallahassee, a lot more rain. Could see a half foot or more of rain coming from this system, with areas like the Cape Canaveral to Brevard County to Volusia, Daytona. Rainfall totals, I wouldn't go into the system expecting as much rain. That could again change if there's more of an east path and more turn. You could see high rain totals, but still odds are you will see the least amount of rain out of this event compared to, say, Ocala or Gainesville or Cedar Key or Lake City. Those are the areas we're probably going to see about 3 inches or more, 3 to 5 inches of rain on the top end with this system. And what we are still expecting, just kind of sum things up, and I want to make sure, and that's why I'm taking my time with this, I want to make sure you understand what's going on. Tuesday and Wednesday would be the most likely impacts for our area. We have a storm alert day for those 2 days because that's when things will start to go downhill and when you absolutely need to be paying attention. Waves of gusty storms are certainly possible, with the heaviest rain to the west, as I showed you. Just to reiterate this, tornadoes would be a possibility. Isolated tornadoes, that could be nocturnal, which is something we don't like because you want to go to sleep. But there's a possibility of storms continuing overnight into Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. The isolated tornadoes, possible spin-ups within the bands of rain pushing through. Now, finally, about ½ inch to 3 inches of rain seems to be the possibility right now, but this could again change, and we should get better and better idea of this as we go through the next 24 to 36 hours. Once we get the data from the hurricane hunters, the system finally starts to move north, then the models can kind of really hone in on this. With currently 40 to 50 mile per hour winds, an estimation possible. But we do have a storm alert day, Tuesday and Wednesday. Those seem to be the 2 days with tropical rain, wind, and isolated tornadoes, all possibility for our area. And if you're along the coast, coastal flooding as well. So just to wrap things up here, what you should do if you've got some time on your hand for the next couple of days, if you live near the coast, make sure you're topping off your hurricane kit, reviewing things, knowing your insurance that you have, understanding that. I know that there's been some changes here in the past year. Make sure you're aware of that. Your batteries, make sure you've got that. Your prescriptions, your good food and water. You want to make sure and ensure you're all good. You just want to check all boxes here while you can, while things are quiet. And finally, keep checking in with us. We will continue to provide you more updates, and so you know exactly what to expect. We will let you know if things are really getting a bit intense. You'll know from us here first once we have a better idea of things. So continue to check in. We'll have more updates here throughout the day. The whole weather team, Brooks Garner will be in here this evening for our 10 o'clock news with more, and we'll have the full weather team at your disposal here leading up to the event. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.